In the movie, a photographer goes to a lonely desert to take pictures of a solar eclipse. After setting up his camera, he finds a crying child alone. He follows the child, only to be tricked and lost in the desert. Wyndham finds a hidden house and meets a woman named Alina, who changes everything in ways he didn't expect. The story was about a man named Wyndham, who was a photographer. He went to an abandoned desert to take pictures of a solar eclipse that was happening that day. After the road ended, he had to walk a lot to find the best spot in the desert for his photos. Before the eclipse began, he had already set up his equipment. After taking the pictures, he planned to leave the desert before evening. While he was walking back to his car, he saw a crying child alone in the deserted area. It was unusual to see a child by himself in such a remote place. Wyndham looked around but did not see anyone who might be the child's family or companion. Although the child did not seem to be in immediate danger, Wyndham decided to help him. The child did not listen to Wyndham and kept walking. Wyndham asked where he was going, and the child said he was searching for his lost parents. Wyndham followed the child, even though he did not want to. The child led Wyndham several kilometers in the opposite direction from his car, and then ran away, laughing and saying nothing. Wyndham realized that the child had tricked him and was trying to deceive him. Wyndham did not know what would happen to him. He tried to get to his car before evening, but he knew that no matter how much he walked, it would soon be night. In the dark, he would get lost in the desert, and that is exactly what happened. It became very dark, and he found himself lost. He decided to spend the night under a rock. After some time, Wyndham heard noises coming from somewhere. He followed the sounds and found a pit with a house at the bottom. Using a rope ladder, Wyndham reached the house. He knocked on the door, needing help, but no one answered. Feeling desperate, Wyndham had to force his way inside. It was strange because the woman inside was not afraid of him, even though he was a stranger. She continued with her work. Wyndham told her he was lost and needed to use her phone. The woman did not answer, but placed food in front of him. Wyndham began to explain his situation, saying he tried to help a child, but the child had tricked him. The woman told him it was getting late and suggested he should sleep. Wyndham went to sleep quietly. Later, the woman changed her clothes in front of him and went to bed herself. The next morning, when Wyndham woke up, the woman was still sleeping. As he left the house with some money, he noticed that the ladder he used to get to the pit was gone. The place was very deep with tall, hot mountains all around. There was no other way to get out. When the girl woke up, Wyndham asked her where the ladder had gone. The girl said she didn't know. When the ladder was still missing by noon, Wyndham decided to try climbing the mountains himself. However, climbing these hot mountains was very hard. He had to spend another night there. The next day, with no ladder in sight, Wyndham took a cloth and a hammer from the girl named Alina and tried climbing the mountains again. This time, he managed to climb quite a bit. Suddenly, some people appeared and threw a dead chicken at Wyndham from above. This made him lose his balance and fall. Falling from such a height made him unconscious. He lay there all day. When Wyndham woke up at night, he saw that the hammer had hit his foot. After seeing Wyndham in pain all day, Alina came to help him. She took the hammer out of his foot and bandaged. Because of this, Wyndham stayed stuck there for another 2 days. After 2 days, he tried to leave again, but the ladder was still missing from the mountains. He shouted loudly, asking anyone above to help him. Hearing his cries, Alina came out again. Wyndham asked her who she was and what she wanted from him. Alina seemed frightened and said she could take care of him and give him food. Wyndham replied that he did not want food. He just wanted to go back to his life. Alina tried to get closer to Wyndham, but he moved away from her. At that moment, some boys saw him and asked what he needed. Wyndham was very happy to see them and said he needed a rope to get out. One of the boys said he would find a rope and bring it back. He told Wyndham to wait there. Wyndham felt a glimmer of hope. After a while, the rope was brought to him. The boys told Wyndham to wrap the rope around himself tightly. He did as they instructed, and the boys began to pull him up. However, they soon stopped pulling Wyndham. They swung Wyndham around roughly with the rope. Wyndham shouted loudly for them to stop, and not to do this. They did not listen. Eventually, Wyndham hit a mountain and lost consciousness. Then Alina arrived and spoke to them in their language, telling them to stop and let him go. The boys dropped him down, and when Wyndham woke up, he found himself on Alina's bed. He tried to get up and leave, but his wounds were still hurting and he could not move forward. He lay down on the ground. Alina came to him and said he could not leave easily. He had to accept his situation and stay there. Wyndham realized that he could not escape so easily. agreed to stay. Over the next few days, Wyndham and Alina began to live together like a family. The boys who had trapped Wyndham eventually brought them the things they needed. Alina cooked for Wyndham, washed his clothes, and took care of everything. Meanwhile, Wyndham started growing vegetables. Despite this, Wyndham still hoped he would escape. One day, the boys brought alcohol with their supplies, and Wyndham drank a lot of it that night. In his drunken state, Wyndham did not realize how close he got to Alina. The next day, tried again to find a way out, but there was none. However, that day, he got a glimmer of hope. A boy spoke to him and asked if Wyndham could teach him because he wanted to study. Wyndham agreed and said, "Yes, of course. If you can get me out of here, we will leave together and become a family. I will teach you everything then." The boy replied that he might not be able to get him out immediately. He said he could only help when his friends were far away or asleep, but he promised to help Wyndham. Wyndham agreed and thanked him. When Wyndham returned home, Alina told him that she was pregnant. This news upset Wyndham greatly. Much time passed, and the boy who had promised to help had still not returned. One night, they heard strange voices from the boys upstairs. Alina told Wyndham that the boys were performing some kind of ritual. The next morning, Wyndham woke up to Alina crying and screaming. When he went outside, he saw that the boy who had asked for Wyndham's help had been killed and hung up in the mountains. Alina was crying loudly when she saw the boy. She told Wyndham that the boy was her child and that he had been killed because of him. She became very angry, picked up a piece of wood, and started hitting Wyndham. She hit him so hard that he became unconscious. Afterward, Alina locked Wyndham in a cage. He stayed in the cage for 9 months. Alina brought him food and water, which he ate like an animal. After a long time, Wyndham saw a new hope. A girl came to the pit and was shocked to see Wyndham locked in the cage. He asked her for help and begged her to get him out. The girl went to find someone who could help. But soon the boy who had imprisoned Wyndham caught her. The boys then killed the girl in front of Wyndham. After this, Wyndham realized that he would not be able to escape from this horrible place. A few days later, he got an idea from looking at some paintings. He thought there might be a tribe living nearby. Alina was about to give birth soon. Wyndham told her that she might need his help at this time. He asked her to get him out of the cage so he could help her. But Alina said no and told him that she would handle everything herself. She had done it before. Hearing Alina's answer, Wyndham begged her to let him out of the cage and end his suffering. He told her that if she could not free him, then she should kill him instead. Alina had already left after hearing Wyndham's pleas. Wyndham continued shouting for help. A few days later, Alina returned and opened his cage. She asked Wyndham to help her because she was in trouble. Even though Wyndham did not want to, he came out to help. After being in the cage for so long, he had trouble walking properly. Today, Wyndham saw that the ladder was back. That have easily used it to escape, he decided it was better to help Alina than to free himself. Alina had a son, and they were both very happy to see him. But as soon as the baby was born, the boys who had imprisoned Wyndham came down, cut Wyndham's throat, and killed him. Wyndham's body stayed in the same place, rotting away. This was how the story ended.